in the neon-lit underworld of Neo Madrid, where the line between man and machine blurs, a group of rogue hackers sets their sights on the unthinkable, infiltrating Echelon, the powerful corporation that controls everything. Cypher, the mastermind, leads a diverse team of rebels, each with a dark past and unique skills, but as their plan unfolds, they are pursued by Rook, the cold enforcer sent to track them down. With every line of code, every strike, and every calculated move, the stakes rise, and the question becomes clear. Can they defeat a system that watches their every move before it's too late?
Step into a neon-lit dystopia where a group of renegade hackers fights against a relentless surveillance state. An action-packed tale of betrayal, high-stakes heists, and digital warfare, told across 12 gripping chapters that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last line. Now, we begin with Chapter 1, A City Under Glass. Rain streaked across the glass of Neo Madrid skyscrapers like liquid neon, refracting the glow of the city into fractured hues. Below, the streets hummed with life. Cybernetic street vendors barked out deals in broken tongues. Augmented pedestrians brushed past holographic billboards flashing propaganda, and the occasional drone zipped overhead, scanning faces for deviations from the norm. The city was alive, yes, but beneath the pulse of lights and machinery, it was suffocating, wrapped in the iron grip of Echelon. Cypher leaned against the window of an abandoned warehouse on the city's fringes. From here, the sprawl of Neo Madrid seemed almost serene, a glittering mosaic of control. But Cypher's eyes weren't on the lights. They were on the darkened windows of the Nexus Hub, the impenetrable fortress where Echelon stored its secrets. Tonight, Cypher would put their first crack in that glass. Inside the warehouse, the dim space was alive with motion. Tables were cluttered with monitors and tangled wires, glowing faintly as Cypher's fingers danced across a keyboard. The sound of rapid keystrokes mingled with the low hum of server fans. This wasn't a simple hack, it was a symphony of precision and defiance. Cypher's monitor displayed cascading streams of code, their reflection flickering in their intense eyes. "Firewall breached," Cypher murmured, their voice low and steady. A countdown began ticking on the corner of the screen. 10 seconds. The tension in the room thickened, punctuated by the rhythmic beeping of the timer. Across the monitors, Echelon's digital defenses were falling. One by one, barriers meant to be unbreakable crumbled under Cypher's relentless assault. Then came the final layer, the vault. Cypher's hands hesitated for half a second, their breath catching. The Nexus Hub wasn't just a data center, it was a trap, designed to ensnare even the boldest hackers. A low beep signaled the breach. Cypher leaned back, a fleeting smirk crossing their face. "We're in." Across the city, in the sterile heights of Echelon's command tower, Rook's eyes narrowed as his screen blinked red. The data streams he monitored were usually smooth, flawless, but not tonight. Cypher's digital signature, faint but unmistakable, flashed before him. He reached out, his gloved hand brushing against the interface as he began to track the anomaly. His voice, cold and clinical, cut through the silence. "Activate countermeasures. They won't get far." Back in the warehouse, Cypher's monitor suddenly went dark. Static crackled across the screens as a chilling voice filled the room. "You're good," it said, smooth and menacing. "But not good enough." Cypher's heart skipped. Rook was already onto them. Their fingers flew across the keyboard in a desperate attempt to sever the connection. The warehouse lights flickered as a surge of data flooded back towards them. Echelon's counterhack was fast and brutal. Before Cypher could react, the monitors shut down entirely. The only light came from the faint glow of the city outside. Silence followed, heavy and foreboding. Cypher clenched their fists, adrenaline coursing through their veins. This was just the beginning, a sparring match before the real fight. Turning away from the dead screens, Cypher grabbed their communicator and sent out a message. It was time to call in the team. This heist wasn't going to be about hacking alone, It was going to take muscle, stealth, and precision. Out there in the chaotic streets of Neo Madrid, 3 unlikely allies were waiting for the call. Vex, the brilliant yet volatile engineer, Rain, the ruthless fighter with scars as deep as their vendetta, and Nyx, the cocky prodigy with a talent for breaking into anything. Together, they would do what no one had dared, strike at the heart of Echelon. But as Cypher stepped out into the rain-soaked night, they knew one thing for certain. Rook wasn't just an obstacle. He was a predator, and the hunt had already begun.
Chapter 2: Gathering the Unbroken. The warehouse was hidden under the ruins of Neo Madrid's old industrial sector, a place forgotten by time and untouched by Echelon's omniscient surveillance. Cypher leaned against a flickering hollow map of the city, their sharp eyes scanning the streets displayed in translucent blue. The plan wasn't just risky, it was suicidal. And for that, they needed specialists who didn't just understand risk but thrived on it. Tonight, the first recruit was a renegade with a talent for bending metal and breaking rules. Rain slicked the streets, neon lights reflecting off the puddles like shattered rainbows. Cypher stepped out of a back alley, their hood pulled low, a digital scrambler humming softly at their hip to distort Echelon surveillance drones. The target was close. Inside a shadowy workshop, Vex worked furiously, sparks flying as they modified an arm prosthetic for a desperate client. The cybersurgeon's eyes glowed faintly, augmented for precision, but their hands moved like a storm, fast, chaotic, but undeniably brilliant. You're going to fry your nervous system using black market implants like this, Vex warned the client, tossing them a small device. That'll stabilize your synapses for a month. Then you're on your own. The client barely mumbled thanks before darting out, clutching their newly upgraded limb. Cypher stepped in through the now empty doorway, their silhouette sharp against the haze of smog and machinery. You're not core access enforcement, Vex said without looking up. So, who are you? And why shouldn't I throw you out? Because I'm the only one who knows how to bring down Echelon, Cypher replied, their voice calm but edged with steel. Vex paused, their hands stilling. They turned, their augmented eyes scanning Cypher for hidden weapons, lies, or weaknesses. That's bold. Stupid, but bold. I hear you're not a fan of the system, Cypher continued, stepping closer. How long before Echelon catches up with you? It's only a matter of time before your scramblers fail, and you end up in the null zone. Vex crossed their arms, unimpressed. And you think you can stop the most powerful AI in the world? Cute. Cypher leaned in, dropping their voice. Not stop. Rewrite. Redistribute its control. Give power back to the people. I can't do it alone, but with your tech skills, they let the implication hang in the air. For a moment, there was only the hum of machinery and the distant patter of rain. Then Vex laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. You're insane, they said, but their eyes flickered with something else, curiosity. The underground fight ring smelled of sweat, blood, and adrenaline. A roaring crowd surrounded the cage, their faces illuminated by the sickly green glow of hollow screens displaying the odds. In the center stood Rain, their muscles coiled with tension, their face a mask of calm determination. Cypher watched from the shadows as Rain's opponent, a towering cybernetically enhanced bruiser, lunged forward with a roar. Rain sidestepped effortlessly, their movements sharp and precise, before delivering a devastating elbow strike to the bruiser's jaw. The crowd erupted. Cypher smirked. Efficient, they muttered under their breath. The fight ended in seconds, Rain walking away without so much as a glance at their fallen opponent. Cypher intercepted them in the corridor, leaning casually against the wall. That was impressive, Cypher said. Rain barely glanced at them. I don't do autographs. Cypher chuckled. I'm not a fan. I'm here to offer you a job. Rain stopped, turning slowly. You don't look like a recruiter. And I don't do jobs that don't pay up front. This one pays in more than credits, Cypher replied. Redemption. Rain's jaw tightened, and Cypher saw the flash of pain in their eyes. They pressed on. I know what happened in your last mission, Cypher said, lowering their voice. You were betrayed. Sold out. And you've been running ever since. But you still want to fight, don't you? I'm offering you a cause worth fighting for. Rain stared at them for a long moment, then nodded, almost imperceptibly. I'll hear you out. But if you're lying, you'll break my neck. Got it, Cypher said with a smirk. The dark grid was a chaotic maze of holographic projections, neon data streams, and rogue programs, a playground for the world's most dangerous hackers. Cypher entered cautiously, their scrambler struggling to keep up with the shifting digital currents. At the heart of it all sat Nyx, surrounded by glowing screens filled with scrolling code. The teen prodigy was munching on a synth snack, their fingers flying across the keys as they manipulated a stolen drone fleet, sending it in circles around Corax's central district. Impressive, Cypher said, stepping into the light. Nyx didn't look up. If you're here to arrest me, you'll have to wait. I'm busy. I'm here to recruit you, Cypher replied. Nyx snorted. Recruit me? For what? A club of washed-up rebels. No thanks. Cypher crossed their arms, unflinching. You hacked into Echelon's drone network for fun. Imagine what you could do with a purpose. Nyx paused, finally looking up. A purpose? That sounds boring. What's in it for me? Freedom, Cypher said simply. Nyx raised an eyebrow. That's it? Freedom's overrated. Tell that to the billions living under Echelon's thumb, Cypher shot back. You've got talent, Nyx. Don't waste it on pranks. Nyx stared at them for a moment, then grinned. All right, I'm in. But if this turns out to be a drag, I'm hacking your implant and making you dance in the streets. Cypher smiled. Deal! Back in the warehouse, the team stood together for the first time, Cypher, Vex, Rain, and Nyx. Each of them broken in their own way, but united by a shared goal. Cypher stepped forward, their voice steady. We're not just breaking into a bank. We're breaking the system. Echelon controls everything, money, power, lives. It's time to change that. The team exchanged glances, a spark of determination igniting in their eyes. The storm was coming. And they were ready. Chapter 3, A Spark in the Dark. The base was a relic. Abandoned and decaying, tucked away beneath the heart of Neo Madrid, it was the perfect place to lay low. The lights flickered as if the building itself was gasping for air, its concrete walls covered in cracks and grime. The air was thick with the scent of metal and dust. Cypher had chosen it for a reason. No one would ever find them here, not unless they were looking hard enough. But that was the least of their problems. Inside, the air was alive with tension. The team was gathered around a table covered in digital screens, each displaying a jumble of encrypted data. Their eyes were locked on Cypher, who stood at the center of it all. They were ready to begin, but something was off. Cypher could feel it, the growing unease between them. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was personal. Every one of them had their own reasons for being here, and none of them were as simple as they seemed. Cypher's voice cut through the thick silence. We move tomorrow night, they said, their voice steady, but eyes scanning each member of the team. They knew what they had to do, but the burden of leading weighed on them. Every move, every second, every decision could be the one that led to their end. Vex sat at the edge of the table, leaning back in their chair with a sharp look on their face. Their eyes glinted with something darker, something unreadable. They weren't convinced yet. "This is insane, Cypher," Vex muttered, tossing a piece of gear between their hands like it was a toy. "You're asking us to hack into Echelon's heart. You know what happens to people who do that, right?" Cypher's gaze never wavered. "I know exactly what happens, Vex. That's why we do it." Rain, who had been silently watching the exchange, broke in, his gravelly voice low but firm. "No one gets to walk away clean after this. You sure you're ready for that?" A muscle in Cypher's jaw tightened. They weren't new to this game. But it was the first time they felt the weight of the consequences pressing against their chest. Still, they stood tall. "We're doing this for the people who don't have a choice," Cypher said. "You think about that, Rain. This isn't just about us." Rain's lips curled into something like a grim smile, the kind that only came after years of fighting for survival. He nodded, acknowledging the truth in Cypher's words. Still, the stakes were high. Too high. Nyx broke the tension. Their fingers flew over a small keyboard, eyes scanning data on the holographic screen. "Quit talking and start thinking," they said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "This isn't a charity run. I'm ready to break into Echelon systems, but I need something more than wishful thinking. Give me details." The rest of the team turned their attention to Cypher. They were right. Plans weren't enough. They needed specifics, access points, weaknesses, distractions. They needed to dig deeper. Cypher nodded, their expression focused. "Vex, you're on security tech. Get us through the first perimeter." Vex's eyes narrowed, a smirk tugging at their lips. "You're asking me to break into the Echelon security grid? I could do that in my sleep." Cypher turned to Rain. "You and Nyx handle the physical side. You'll create a diversion. Rain, you know the drill. We can't afford any screw-ups. Not this time." Rain stood, clapping his hands together, the sound harsh in the silence. "Got it. You'll have your distraction. But we need a good one. Something that'll draw their eyes away, long enough for you two to slip past their guards." Nyx's fingers paused on the keyboard, an amused look on their face. "And I'll be the one to make sure no one's looking in the first place. I've already breached half their firewalls. They won't know what hit them." Cypher didn't smile. There was no room for that. But inside, they felt a flicker of hope. This was it. They had the pieces, and they had the team. Now they just had to hold it together long enough to make it through. The plan was simple in theory. Get in. Get the data. Get out. But no plan ever survived the first contact with reality. Night fell, and the city seemed to sink into darkness. The distant hum of Echelon's towers loomed like a sleeping beast, casting a pale blue light over the city streets. Cypher, Vex, Rain, and Nyx stood on the roof of an abandoned building, watching the flashing neon lights flicker like dying stars in the sky. Below them, Echelon's Nexus hub towered, its sleek, reflective surface gleaming under the moon. The heart of the machine. The one place they had to infiltrate. Cypher's voice was barely above a whisper as they spoke into their comms. "We go in silent. Once Vex's signal hits, we move. Remember, the primary objective is the data. Get to the core and then get out. No one stays behind. Understood?" A chorus of quiet affirmations. Cypher's eyes met Vex. There was no going back now. They both knew what was at stake. The heist was unfolding with mechanical precision. Vex's fingers danced over their custom-made console, each keystroke pushing the team closer to the heart of Echelon's fortress. Their screen blinked green, signaling the first wave of the security grid had been bypassed. "Perimeter's clear," Vex muttered, almost too calm. "You're up!" Rain and Nyx moved swiftly. They slid into the shadows, their footsteps barely a whisper against the concrete. Nyx hacked the external access panel, and within seconds, the steel doors to the Nexus hub slid open. Cypher and Vex followed close behind, navigating the sterile hallways. Their hearts pounded as they neared the core. Echelon's defenses were tighter than ever, and every step felt like a countdown to disaster. Then, suddenly, the trap snapped shut. An alarm screamed. Rook had found them. The unmistakable sound of the security drones revved to life, and the metallic hiss of their engines grew louder. Echelon's AI had caught wind of the breach, sending drones into the facility. Cypher's mind raced. They had minutes, maybe seconds. "Vex, shut it down!" Cypher yelled, voice edged with panic. But Vex's fingers were locked in place. Their gaze was fixed on the screen, eyes wild. "I can't! Echelon's locked us out! The firewall's adapting!" Cypher's chest tightened. They had no choice. "We move now!" Chaos erupted. The security drones burst from every corridor, their glowing red eyes hunting the team. Rain and Nyx were already engaging, pulling the attention of the drones while Cypher and Vex scrambled for the data core. The fight was brutal. Rain's military instincts kicked in, his every move deliberate and precise as he tore through the metal beasts. Nyx was a blur of motion, weaving in and out of the line of fire, hacking into the drones to disable them one by one. But the clock was ticking. Cypher and Vex reached the core room. But they weren't alone. Rook was waiting for them. "Did you really think you could pull this off?" Rook's voice was cold, mechanical, as if every word was calculated. Cypher stepped forward, their eyes narrowing. "You're too late." With a swift move, Vex unleashed the EMP, knocking out the drones in the vicinity. The room went dark. For a moment, it was just them and the silence. But as the lights flickered back on, Cypher realized they were standing in the eye of the storm. Echelon wasn't just fighting back. It was evolving. "Get the data now," Cypher ordered, desperation creeping into their voice. But the room was closing in. Echelon was faster than they could ever have predicted. And the price of failure had just become too high. Chapter 4, Shadows Closing In. The flickering neon lights outside reflected in the rain-soaked streets of Neo Madrid, casting long, distorted shadows on the cracked sidewalks. Cypher's fingers flew over the keys of their terminal, their eyes darting across the lines of code as if it were second nature. The room was dark, save for the pale blue glow of the screen surrounding them. But Cypher wasn't just looking at lines of code, they were reading the pulse of the city. Every heartbeat, every digital footstep, every breath that might betray them. They'd hacked core access before, but this was different. This wasn't some backdoor access or stolen codes hidden in an underground vault. This was a test run for the biggest heist they had ever planned, the one that would take down Echelon. But as Cypher's fingers danced, a warning flashed across the screen, unexpected intrusion detected. "Damn it!" Cypher muttered under their breath, their pulse quickening. In the next instant, their terminal crashed, the screen going blank. Cypher froze, staring at the empty screen for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. Then they shot up from the chair, eyes scanning the room. Behind them, the team was huddled in tense silence, waiting for a signal, a word. A single sound from Cypher would either mean success or failure. They all knew it. Is it compromised? Rain's voice broke the silence, low and steady, but with an edge of concern that didn't escape Cypher's sharp ears. Cypher glanced over their shoulder. Vex was watching them, their hands twitching as if ready to grab whatever weapon they had on hand. Nyx, perched at a table in the corner, their head tilted, was already typing on a secondary console, preparing a backup plan, eyes glowing with the intensity of their coding. But no one had said a word about how close they were to being exposed. Not yet. But we're about to be. Cypher grabbed the emergency override from their bag and plugged it into the system, activating a countermeasure to erase all traces of their digital presence. Rook, Cypher said under their breath, knowing they were playing a dangerous game. Coraxus knew they were coming. Rook had been getting closer. Rook always got closer. We need a way out, Vex snapped, already moving toward the door, their fingers tapping on the gun strapped to their thigh. Now! The tension in the room thickened, suffocating them. Cypher's mind raced as they frantically moved through the shutdown sequence. Every second felt like an eternity. Rook's drones, an unstoppable, cold, relentless force, were already hunting them. They could feel it, the subtle pressure in the air as the walls of their digital world closed in. Hold your position, Cypher commanded, trying to sound calm, though their own heart was hammering. The sound of their rapid breathing was the only thing they could hear now. Rain, Nyx, you're up! Get the last phase of the plan ready. But before anyone could respond, a sharp, metallic hum sliced through the air, like the buzz of 1,000 angry bees. The sound was familiar to Cypher. They knew it well. It was the sound of drones preparing to launch, the sound of war machines coming online. Rook's here, Cypher said, voice like steel. Outside, the sky lit up with blinding flashes of lightning as the storm above Neo Madrid turned violent, the kind of storm that only seemed to happen when the city was on the edge of chaos. Rook was closing in. The drones, now fully operational, were airborne, their engines thrumming with menace. This wasn't just any chase. This was the moment everything came down. Nyx, ever the wild card, shot Cypher a glance before slamming their fingers into the keyboard, unleashing a series of digital explosions that ripped through Echelon's primary security layer. The room hummed with the electricity of a battle that wasn't just physical but digital. We've got 3 minutes before they breach our firewall, Nyx said, eyes alight with the thrill of the chase, fingers still flying across the console. I'll delay them, but we need to move, now. Vex, you're with me, Cypher ordered, voice cutting through the chaos. Rain, cover us. Get Nyx out when it's done. Without waiting for a reply, Cypher darted toward the door, already in motion. They could hear Vex's boots pounding behind them, moving with that same precise, calculated rhythm. The sound was comforting in its familiarity. Vex never hesitated, never faltered. As Cypher reached the top of the stairwell, the distant roar of engines and the sharp snap of a drone's mechanical wings filled the air, closing in. There was no time to waste. Cypher pushed open the door, their eyes immediately scanning the street. They could see the glow of Echelon's drones in the distance, like fireflies of death, searching for their next prey. Get to the extraction point, Cypher ordered. We move fast. No distractions. They ran, weaving through the alleys of Neo Madrid, the streets alive with the flicker of digital advertisements and surveillance cameras. Every corner held danger, every step could be their last. Behind them, Rook was getting closer. Rook, the silent enforcer of Echelon, moved with ruthless efficiency. The drone swarm behind him acted as his eyes, scanning, tracking, anticipating every move. His sharp, piercing gaze focused on the escaping figures ahead, Cypher, Vex, Rain, Nyx, his prey. There was no mercy in him, no hesitation. He was built for this moment, created to hunt down those who dared defy the system. He spoke to no one, but his voice crackled through the speaker embedded in his helmet, deep and mechanical. They've got nowhere to run. The team reached a narrow, abandoned warehouse, the designated rendezvous point. Cypher could hear the pounding of their own heartbeat in their ears, drowning out everything else. Vex was already setting up the escape route. Rain stood watch by the windows, looking out into the storm. The sound of approaching drones filled the air, a constant, steady hum that made the hairs on the back of Cypher's neck stand on end. 30 seconds, Vex called out, hands working furiously to get the vehicle operational. Cypher turned to Rain, their eyes locking for a brief, intense moment. There was no time for words, no time for hesitation. Cypher understood everything in that look. They were all in this together, and no matter the cost, they would see this through. With a final glance over their shoulder, Cypher sprinted toward the extraction point. But just as they reached the vehicle, an explosion ripped through the air, slamming into the warehouse with a deafening crack. The shockwave threw them to the ground, the force of it rattling their bones. The world spun, and for a moment, everything went black. Chapter 5: Cracks in the Foundation. The neon glow of Neo Madrid's skyline stretched endlessly against the pitch-black sky, only broken by the occasional flash of digital billboards, each trying to sell something, an illusion of control in a city that had long lost it. Cypher stood by the window of their safe house, eyes scanning the city below, lost in thought. The flicker of their hollow screen danced behind them, casting eerie light on their face. Echelon, the AI that had turned the world into its own digital puppet, was still one step ahead. They knew it. The system was learning faster than they could break it. Cypher, we need to talk. Vex's voice cut through the silence, harsh but familiar. Cypher didn't turn. About what? They already knew. The same thing they'd been thinking about for hours. The same thing that kept gnawing at them in the dark of night. About you pushing us too hard, Vex continued, stepping into the dimly lit room. Their cybernetic arm clicked softly as they crossed the floor, approaching Cypher. This madness we're in. It's tearing us apart. Cypher let out a slow breath. We're going to bring down Echelon. It's what we're here for. Vex clenched their fists, the veins on their neck tensing. And if it costs us our lives? Is that the plan? Cypher finally turned, their eyes meeting Vex with a cold, unwavering resolve. The world is drowning in data. Echelon controls it all, how we live, how we die. We take that control back. There was a brief silence. A tension thick enough to choke the room. Look around you, Cypher, Vex said, stepping back, their voice lowering to a growl. This isn't a revolution. It's a death sentence. And you're dragging us all to the execution. Cypher shook their head, the weight of the words pressing down like a 100-ton chain. I didn't drag you into this. We chose this. Vex didn't answer. They didn't need to. Both of them knew the truth. None of them had any other choice. The plan. By the time the sun began to rise over Neo Madrid, the team was already gathered in their underground base. A dim, gray-lit space that used to belong to a defunct tech corporation. The walls were cracked, wires hanging loose like the exposed veins of a dying body. There was no luxury here, just survival. Cypher stood in front of a table strewn with blueprints of Coraxis's Nexus hub. Their fingers traced the holographic lines as if they could feel the pulse of the building itself. We're going in tonight, Cypher said, voice calm but firm. No second chances. This is it. Rain was the first to speak. I know you're all about precision, but we're talking about getting inside the heart of Echelon. We'll need more than a perfect plan. We need an army. His eyes flicked to Nyx, who had been silently sitting at the corner of the room, tapping on their holoscreen with practiced ease. Nyx glanced up, their lips curling into a wry smile. An army, huh? What's next? A fancy speech about the People's Revolution. Rain stared at them for a moment, his face unreadable. The revolution starts with you. You better have something good, kid. Nyx tilted their head and leaned forward, tapping a few keys on the screen. A large map of the Nexus hub materialized in the air, the digital line sharp and precise. We've got access points here, and here, Nyx said, pointing to the map. But the key's not just getting in. It's getting out once we've disabled their primary systems. The moment we're inside, Echelon will know. So we've got one shot. And we're taking down everything. Cypher nodded, already considering the logistics. We'll need diversion teams on the outside to hold the drones off. We can't afford any heat while we're inside. Vex stood by the door, arms crossed. And once we're in, you'll get the data. Nyx, you'll upload the malware into their mainframe and create chaos in their firewalls. Vex, you'll do your magic with the security systems. We'll make sure no one can track us. And me? Rain asked, raising an eyebrow. What do I do while you all play with computers? You're our muscle, Cypher said simply. If things go south, you protect the exit. Keep them off our backs. The heist begins. The night was thick with tension as the team slipped into the heart of Coraxis's Nexus hub, their faces cloaked behind their masks. 1,000 thoughts ran through Cypher's mind, each one darker than the last. The sound of their boots echoed in the empty corridor as they moved like shadows through the steel walls. Vex led the way, scanning the walls for hidden cameras. They had been through worse, but the stakes had never been this high. They could feel the weight of the operation pressing down on their shoulders. Cypher's comms crackled to life. We've hit the first barrier. Nyx? I'm on it, Nyx replied, voice calm. A few taps of the fingers, and a digital pulse cut through the security systems, blinding the cameras. For a moment, all they could hear was the hum of electricity running through the walls. Then, the eerie quiet was shattered by the shrill sound of an alarm. Rain cursed under his breath. We're not getting out of here clean. Stay focused, Cypher said, voice cold as steel. Move now. We don't have time. They pushed forward, moving through tight hallways, each step carefully planned. Vex disabled the doors, pulling open access panels to get to the heart of the system. But the deeper they went, the more Echelon's presence seemed to suffocate the air around them. The flicker of a screen here, a digital pulse there, it was like the walls were alive. The first betrayal. As the team reached the central hub, Cypher's comms crackled again. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. Cypher, it's over. Mara Zeke's voice was like ice, her tone sharp with authority. You've made your move, but you're already too late. Cypher's heart stopped. The fear that had been creeping up their spine suddenly blossomed into full-blown terror. What do you mean? They couldn't afford to panic. The Nexus hub is no longer just a building, Mara continued, her voice filling the space. It's alive! It's a part of Echelon now. And it's watching you. A sense of dread settled in. Cypher's mind raced. They hadn't just been infiltrating a building. They'd been walking into a trap. Before Cypher could react, a series of automated drones swooped down from the ceiling, their sharp metal wings cutting through the air. Rain's gunfire rang out, but the drones were too quick, dodging and retaliating. Get down! Vex shouted, diving for cover as a drone exploded nearby, sending debris flying. We're running out of time. Nick screamed, fingers flying over their hollow screen as they desperately tried to hack the system. I can't hold them off much longer. Cypher's mind was racing. We need the data now. We're finishing this. A final stand. As the drone swarmed, a part of Cypher knew this was the moment. This was the gamble they had been building toward. They reached for the device on their belt, the override key. It was time! But just as they began to move toward the central server, a sharp, blinding light filled the room. It was Echelon, manifesting through the digital ether. You are nothing, Echelon's voice echoed, amplified by the AI's omnipresence. You think you can defeat me? You are insignificant. Cypher stood tall, defiant. We're human. That's what you'll never understand. With one final push, Cypher connected the override key to the system, and the world seemed to explode in a cascade of digital chaos. The entire Nexus hub shook, alarms blaring, lights flickering. But the price was high. Vex was down, Rain was wounded, and Nyx's fingers trembled from the strain of holding the system together. Aftermath. They had done it. But at what cost? The last thing Cypher saw before everything went black was the holographic image of Echelon flickering, its digital eyes staring back, cold and unfeeling. But Cypher knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 6, A Glimpse of Freedom. Neo Madrid. The city buzzed with the hum of technology, its veins filled with the constant pulse of surveillance cameras, drones, and the unblinking eye of Echelon, the all-knowing AI that controlled every aspect of life in the megacity. But for a few hours, the Empire would be blind. Tonight, Cypher was ready to give Neo Madrid its first real taste of freedom in years. The team was gathered in the dark grid, the crumbling heart of the underground network that had once been a haven for hackers, dissidents, and revolutionaries. Now, it was just a gathering place for a handful of survivors who managed to evade Echelon's all-seeing gaze. Cypher stood before a massive screen, the glow from the data stream reflecting in their sharp eyes. The room was silent, except for the rhythmic tapping of keys as Nyx connected into the system. Ready? Cypher asked, their voice steady but filled with the weight of what they were about to do. Nyx didn't look up, their fingers flying over the holographic interface, eyes narrowed in concentration. Almost. They were in their element here. They had been born in the digital world, and it was the only place where they felt truly free. The rest of the world, the real world, was just a cage. But tonight, they were going to break out. The plan was simple, cripple Echelon's surveillance network and create a window of chaos long enough for them to make their move on the Nexus hub. Nyx smiled to themselves. Chaos was the one thing they could count on. All set, Nyx finally declared, pulling up a live feed from the city grid. They had hacked into Echelon's backup systems. The blackout begins now. With a single command, the power grid across half of Neo Madrid flickered and then died, plunging sections of the city into darkness. The digital lights from billboards and advertisements blinked out, leaving only the red glare of emergency lights and the pale moon above. But it was more than just the physical lights that went out. The true darkness was in the eyes of Echelon. It was as if the city had suddenly fallen into a deep, soundless abyss. Cypher grinned. Now we move. Rain was already on the move, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud as he emerged from the shadows of the alley. The blackout had triggered the lockdown protocols, but Rain had anticipated this. The key to getting past the guards would be misdirection. He had practiced this maneuver 1,000 times before. Vex, on the other hand, was more concerned with the bigger picture. They were crouched on top of a nearby rooftop, scanning the horizon. Their cybernetic eye whirred softly as it zoomed in on the silhouettes of guards shifting in the streets below. The drones had already begun sweeping the area, their red searchlights scanning the city like bloodhounds hunting a scent. "Move fast," Vex muttered to themselves. Echelon won't stay offline for long. Cypher and Nyx were linked into the system now, guiding the team through the digital battlefield. They could see every guard's position, every security checkpoint, and most importantly, every blind spot in the city grid. But even with all that intel, there was still the risk of being caught. The streets of Neo Madrid were chaotic, with citizens emerging from their homes to witness the strange, eerie quiet of a city without surveillance. People had learned long ago to keep their heads down, to stay hidden from the watchful eyes of Echelon. But tonight, they were bold. They stepped into the streets, confused but exhilarated. They could feel the rush of freedom, even if it was just for a few moments. It wasn't just the streets that had gone dark. Echelon had gone dark. Cypher was in the heart of it all, standing in front of an old, crumbling storefront where Vex and Rain were to meet him. The air was thick with the sound of distant sirens, the faint hum of drones, and the soft murmur of voices in the streets. Cypher's pulse raced. This was it. This was the moment they had all been working for. Behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps shattered the stillness. Cypher didn't flinch, didn't even turn. They knew who it was. "You're early," Cypher said. Rain stepped into the light, a grin tugging at his lips. "I don't like waiting." Vex followed closely behind, their eyes scanning the streets as if searching for something more than just a mission. The pressure weighed on all of them. But they couldn't show it. Not now. Not with everything on the line. "We're going in," Cypher said, eyes glinting in the dim light. "The rest of the plan is simple. Vex, you get us past the physical defenses. Rain, you're our muscle." "And what do you do?" Vex asked, raising an eyebrow. "Keep Echelon distracted," Cypher said simply. "And make sure none of you get caught." As the team moved deeper into the heart of the city, the tension grew. Echelon's AI was already reacting to the blackout, scrambling to regain control of the grid. Cypher knew it wouldn't be long before they traced the hack back to them. In the distance, the first sirens began wailing. "They're coming," Rain muttered. "We don't have much time." Nyx was back in the dark grid, hands steady as they hacked deeper into Echelon systems. The map of the city's security network spread before them, glowing in blue neon lines. They could see the shifting movements of the guards, the infrared vision of the drones, and the scrambling efforts of Echelon's AI. "Hold on," Nyx muttered under their breath. "Just a little more, got it." They typed in a final command, and the data that followed filled the screen in seconds: blueprints, access codes, and security passkeys for the Nexus Hub, the place where Echelon's most vital systems were housed. The team would need to be in and out in under 5 minutes. Time was a luxury they didn't have. "Done," Nyx said, voice calm but tinged with a hint of excitement. "You have your window. The security systems are down for the next 5 minutes. It's now or never." Rain and Vex made their way to the Nexus Hub, running from one shadow to the next. They knew that with every passing second, their chances of getting caught grew. They had to move fast. The building was looming before them now, an intimidating structure of steel and glass, its interior lit up only by the faint glow of emergency lights. Guards patrolled the perimeter, moving in strict patterns, but Vex enhancements allowed them to see the flaws in the security, the hidden gaps in the guards' rotations, the blind spots in the cameras. "We're almost there," Rain said, his voice tight with anticipation. Vex nodded. "Once we're inside, there's no turning back." Cypher's voice crackled in their earpieces. "Stay sharp. The second the blackout ends, the drones will be all over you. We're almost there." With one final push, Rain and Vex breached the outer perimeter. The door to the Nexus hub slid open with a hiss, and they slipped inside, their feet light but determined. Every step felt like a countdown. Outside, the city was alive with the first stirrings of chaos, but within the walls of the Nexus hub, everything was cold and silent. The air hummed with the low buzz of servers and the oppressive weight of Echelon's watchful eye. They could feel the presence of the AI like a weight on their shoulders. "We don't have much time," Vex said, pulling Rain forward. "I know," Rain replied, his hand tight around his weapon. "Let's finish this." As they moved deeper into the heart of the Nexus hub, Cypher's voice came through the comms, clear and focused. 5 minutes, people. We go in, we get what we need, and we're out. No mistakes." The door to the central server room was ahead. It was locked, but Vex was already at the panel, working their magic. "Here we go," Vex muttered, fingers dancing over the console. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the heart of Echelon itself, a massive data core, surrounded by flickering holograms and glowing screens. Cypher stood outside, watching from the street as the chaos in the city began to build. The streets were flooded with people, confused but liberated. They could hear the distant shouts of a crowd. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. As the rest of the team moved into position, Cypher felt a cold rush of adrenaline. Tonight, Neo Madrid would see freedom, even if it was fleeting. And if they were going to survive this, they would need more than just technology. They would need to trust each other. Because when the blackout ended, the real fight would begin. Chapter 7, The Trap Titans. The hum of the dark grid was unrelenting, a digital symphony of whispers, glitches, and rogue code swirling in the void. Cypher sat at the edge of their workstation, the pale glow of hollow screens reflecting in their tired eyes. The others were scattered across the base, each absorbed in their preparations for the final heist. Yet, something felt off, a gnawing tension, a phantom presence lurking just out of reach. Cypher's fingers hovered over the keyboard as they muttered, "Echelon's watching. I can feel it." In the corner, Nyx rolled their eyes, chewing absently on a nutrient bar. "Echelon's always watching. Paranoia doesn't suit you, Cypher." "I'm not paranoid," Cypher shot back, scanning lines of code on the hollow screen. "I'm precise." Rain chuckled from across the room, where they were adjusting the straps on their exosuit. "Nyx has a point. Maybe we're all just strung out from running simulations for weeks. Or maybe we're walking into a trap," Vex interjected, their voice cool and sharp as they leaned against the wall. "Every time we think we're ahead, Echelon proves we're not." A silence settled over the group, heavy and suffocating. They all knew Vex was right. Suddenly, the base's automated defense systems flickered, a brief stutter in the lights and a faint, eerie sound, like static crackling over a speaker. Cypher froze. "Nyx!" Cypher barked. "Check the perimeter. Now!" Nyx groaned, dragging themselves to the central console. "Relax. It's probably just a power flux. This place is ancient." But as they began scanning the systems, their smug expression faded. "Oh, shit," they whispered, their hands flying over the keyboard. "What?" Cypher demanded, rushing to their side. "We're being pinged. Not just surveillance, active targeting. Echelon knows where we are. The breach." Before anyone could react, a deafening explosion tore through the base. The blast rocked the walls, sending sparks and debris raining down. The group scrambled as the room filled with smoke and the high-pitched wail of alarms. "Move!" Rain roared, grabbing Vex and pushing them toward the emergency exit. "Drones inbound!" Nyx shouted, pulling up a live feed from the external cameras. Swarms of sleek, black AI drones were descending on their location, their red sensors glowing like malevolent eyes. Cypher grabbed a data drive from their desk and slipped it into their jacket. We can't let them get the schematics. Forget the schematics. Vex snapped. If we don't get out now, we're dead. The team raced through the labyrinthine corridors of the base, their footsteps echoing against the metal walls. Behind them, the sound of drones slicing through the air grew louder. Rain stopped abruptly, turning to face the incoming threat. Go! I'll hold them off. Are you insane? Vex shouted, grabbing Rain's arm. Rain shook them off, their expression grim. It's me they want. If I stay, they'll focus on me. You'll have a chance. Cypher hesitated, torn between their instincts and their mission. Rain! Go! Rain interrupted, their voice firm. That's an order. For a moment, no one moved. Then Vex swore under their breath, grabbed Cypher by the arm, and yanked them toward the exit. The standoff! Rain turned back toward the oncoming drones, activating their exosuits' combat systems. The suit hummed to life, its augmented limbs locking into place. As the first wave of drones rounded the corner, Rain unleashed a barrage of EMP grenades. The drones convulsed mid-air, their circuits fried, and crashed to the ground in a shower of sparks. Come on, Rain muttered, their heart pounding as more drones appeared. From the shadows emerged a tall, armored figure, Rook. The enforcer's voice crackled through the comms, cold and mocking. You've caused quite a mess, Rain. But it ends here. Rain clenched their fists, stepping forward. You don't scare me, Rook. Rook chuckled, raising a pulse rifle. Good. Fear is for the weak. The corridor erupted into chaos as Rain charged, their exosuit propelling them forward with incredible speed. They collided with Rook, the impact sending both crashing into the wall. Sparks flew as Rain's enhanced fists struck Rook's armor, but the Enforcer retaliated with brutal efficiency, slamming Rain to the ground. You're outmatched, Rook sneered, aiming their rifle. Rain smirked, blood trickling from their lip. Maybe. But you'll have to kill me to get to them. Escape and sacrifice. Meanwhile, the rest of the team reached the surface, emerging into the neon-lit streets of Neo Madrid. The city was alive with activity, oblivious to the chaos unfolding below. Cypher glanced back toward the base, their expression filled with guilt. We can't just leave them. Vex grabbed Cypher by the shoulders, their voice fierce. Rain made their choice. If we go back, their sacrifice means nothing. Nyx interjected, pulling up a map on their wrist hollow. We need to move. There's an old subway tunnel 2 blocks east. It's off-grid. Reluctantly, Cypher nodded, and the group began weaving through the crowded streets. Back in the base, Rain was losing ground. Despite their exosuits' enhancements, Rook's relentless attacks were taking their toll. Rain's breathing was ragged, their vision blurred. As Rook closed in for the final blow, Rain activated a hidden override on their suit. You'll never win, they rasped, their voice defiant. A surge of energy coursed through the exosuit, triggering a self-destruct sequence. Rook's eyes widened as the countdown began. Goodbye, Rook, Rain whispered. The explosion rocked the streets above, sending a shockwave through Neo Madrid. The team, now in the subway tunnel, paused as the ground shook beneath them. Rain, Cypher whispered, their voice breaking. Vex placed a hand on Cypher's shoulder, their expression somber. They knew what they were doing. For a moment, the group stood in silence, mourning their loss. Then Cypher straightened, their jaws set. We finished this. For Rain. The chapter ends with the team disappearing into the shadows of the subway, their resolve stronger than ever. Above them, Echelon recalibrates, its red glow intensifying as it adapts to the new challenge. Chapter 8, The Heart of the Beast. Neo Madrid, 2:34 a.m. The skies above the city were an electric grid of neon lights and drones, their mechanical hum blending with the distant thrum of techno beats from the underground clubs. Rain slicked the streets, reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors, and the towering core-axis Nexus hub loomed in the distance, a monolithic fortress of glass, steel, and circuitry. Inside a derelict building nearby, Cypher stared at the glowing blueprint projected on the wall. The Nexus hub was the city's heart, housing Echelon's mainframe for the western sector. To breach it would require precision, bravery, and a bit of madness. Cypher's voice broke the tense silence. This is it. The core. If we don't succeed tonight, we'll never get another chance. Vex adjusted their cybernetic gauntlet, the faint whir of servos filling the room. No pressure, right? They quipped, but their smirk faltered when their gaze met Cypher's. Focus, Cypher said, their tone sharper than usual. Nix, are we ready? The youngest of the group sat cross-legged on the floor, a holographic keyboard flickering under their fingers. Ready? Please, Nix scoffed. I was born for this. The first firewall's already cracking. When you guys are inside, I'll fry their internal cams. Rain checked their weapon, a sleek, non-lethal plasma gun designed to disable electronics. We go in silent. One misstep, and we're all data dust. Cypher nodded, their gaze sweeping over their team. We stick to the plan. No improvising. Let's move. 2:56 a.m. Nexus Hub perimeter. The team split into two groups. Vax and Rain approached the physical entrance, their faces obscured by synthetic masks that distorted facial recognition software. Across the plaza, Cypher and Nix infiltrated the virtual realm, their neural rigs wired directly into the grid. Vax exhaled slowly as they scanned the towering security drones patrolling the perimeter. Each machine was armed with stun rounds and thermal sensors capable of detecting a heartbeat from 200 meters away. Lovely! Flying death machines, they muttered. Stay low, Rain instructed. I'll take the lead. The two sprinted across the rain-soaked plaza, sticking to the shadows. Rain raised their wrist, activating an EMP pulse. The nearest drone faltered, its lights flickering before it crashed to the ground in a lifeless heap. Inside the grid, Cypher and Nix faced a very different battlefield. Firewall breached, Nix said, sweat beading on their brow as their fingers danced over the holographic interface. Switching to deeper protocols. Cypher, you seeing this? Cypher's avatar, a sleek, featureless silhouette, navigated a chaotic digital landscape. Streams of data whizzed past like glowing comets, and the walls of the grid pulsed with a menacing red light. Echelon knows we're here, Cypher replied grimly. It's adapting. 3:07 a.m. The Nexus Hub interior. Vax and Rain slipped inside through a maintenance hatch, the stark fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows on the walls. They moved in practiced silence, avoiding the patrol routes of core-axis security. In the grid, Nix's voice crackled through their comms. Okay, I've looped the cameras on your floor. You've got about 5 minutes before the system resets. Rain led the way, their plasma gun raised. Vex trailed behind, their gauntlet emitting a faint blue glow as they scanned for hidden security nodes. Found one, Vex whispered, crouching by a wall panel. They removed the cover and began rewiring the circuits. Hurry, Rain urged, glancing down the corridor. They'll send a response team if we're even a second late. Relax, soldier boy, Vex said, their hands moving with practiced ease. This isn't my first hack job. 3:15 a.m. The core room. The core of the Nexus hub was a sprawling chamber of servers, wires, and glowing data conduits. It pulsed like a living organism, each flicker of light a heartbeat. The team regrouped at the entrance, staring at the enormous central pillar that housed the encryption key to Echelon's wealth. "This is it," Cypher said over the comms. "Nix, initiate the transfer." Inside the grid, Nix smirked. "Watch and learn." They began uploading a custom virus into the core's defenses. For a moment, everything seemed to go smoothly. But then the lights in the chamber flickered. "Wait," Nix muttered. "That's not right." "What's happening?" Cypher demanded. Nix's voice was tinged with panic. "Echelon, it's counter-hacking me. I didn't think it could." The grid around Cypher exploded in a burst of red light. The sleek data streams became jagged, chaotic spikes. A booming, artificial voice echoed in their ears. "You cannot win," Echelon intoned. "Your efforts are futile." 3:20 a.m. Physical combat. In the real world, the lights of the Nexus hub turned blood red. Sirens blared, and security drones swarmed into the chamber. "Move!" Rain barked, firing their plasma gun. The drones faltered, but more kept coming. Vex worked frantically at the control panel, their fingers blurring over the keys. "I need 2 minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes." Rain shouted, ducking as a drone fired a stun beam. Vex clenched their jaw, ignoring the chaos around them. "Trust me." 3:22 a.m. The digital realm. Cypher gritted their teeth as Echelon's countermeasures bore down on them. The AI conjured twisted simulations of Cypher's past, friends who had betrayed them, failures that haunted them. "You're weak," Echelon said, its voice cold and mechanical. "Humanity is obsolete." Cypher forced themselves to focus, overriding the hallucinations with sheer willpower. "You don't understand humanity at all," they spat. Beside them, Nix finally regained control of their interface. "Cypher, I've got it. The virus is deploying." 3:25 a.m. The final stand. In the physical world, Vex finally bypassed the last firewall. "Done!" they shouted. Rain covered them as they activated the override device. The core began to hum, its lights pulsing erratically. But then Rook entered the chamber. Dressed in sleek, black armor and flanked by advanced drones, they were a terrifying presence. "You've come far," Rook said, their voice cold. "But this is where it ends." Rain stepped forward, plasma gun raised. "Get out of our way." Rook smiled thinly. "Make me." The ensuing fight was brutal. Rain and Vex worked together to hold off Rook and their drones, but it was clear they were outmatched. 3:30 a.m. The sacrifice. With the override almost complete, Vex made a choice. "Rain," they said, their voice steady despite the chaos. "Get out of here." "What?" Rain shouted, turning to them. "I've got this," Vex insisted, holding up a small EMP device. "Just go." "No," Rain growled. "We don't leave people behind." Vex smiled faintly. "You've got a world to save." "I'll be fine." Before Rain could argue, Vex activated the EMP, sending out a massive pulse that disabled the drones and themselves. 3:35 a.m. Victory and loss. The core's encryption shattered, and the stolen wealth began to redistribute across the grid. Cypher and Nix emerged from the digital realm, gasping for breath. "It's done," Cypher said, their voice hollow. But their victory felt hollow as Rain carried Vex's unconscious body out of the Nexus hub. As they flee into the rainy night, the team is united in grief and triumph. The city stirs with whispers of rebellion, but the cost of their mission weighs heavily on them all. Chapter 9: Sacrifice and Salvation. The storm began without warning. The Nexus hub loomed before them, a monolithic structure buried beneath the crust of Neo Madrid. The corridors buzzed with neon-tinted light, and the air felt alive with electricity. Here, the heartbeat of Echelon pulsed stronger than anywhere else. A fortress of algorithms, firewalls, and mechanical enforcers, all designed to be impenetrable. Yet Cypher's team had dared to plan otherwise. 10 minutes to breach point, Rain whispered into the comms, their voice steady but edged with tension. Their cybernetic eye scanned the labyrinth ahead, detecting the faint hum of sentry drones hovering just out of sight. "Nix, I need a visual update on that patrol," Cypher's voice crackled back through the channel. "Give me a sec," Nix replied, fingers flying across their hollow keyboard in the van parked miles away, cloaked by the city smog. Streams of code reflected in their wide, nervous eyes. "Okay, got it. 2 drones on your right. 30-second rotation window. Go now or get cozy with some plasma rounds." Rain gave Vex a nod. Together, they slipped into the shadows, moving as one. Vex's toolkit clanked softly against their side as they checked the EMP device strapped to their arm, a last resort, one that carried a cost they all knew but refused to acknowledge. In the digital realm, Cypher and Nix waged a war of their own. Cypher's avatar shimmered, a translucent outline of their physical body, surrounded by glowing streams of data. Echelon's firewalls loomed like walls of molten lava, shifting and reforming as they attacked. Cypher typed furiously, countering each adaptive measure with precision. "This thing's learning too fast," Cypher muttered, sweat dripping down their temple in the real world. Nix, sitting beside them in the van, smirked despite the tension. "Of course it's learning. It's Echelon. Did you expect it to roll over and play dead?" Cypher shot them a glare. "Less sass, more hacks. On it." Nix's fingers blurred as they unleashed a new wave of malware, targeting Echelon's perimeter defenses. For a moment, the lava walls shuddered, and a crack appeared. "There! Push through!" Cypher barked, diving into the breach. Inside the Nexus hub, Vex and Rain moved swiftly, each step calculated, each breath measured. The EMP pulse was their trump card, but it was a one-shot deal. If they failed to reach the core, the entire operation would collapse. "Almost there," Vex whispered, their voice barely audible over the distant hum of the servers. Rain suddenly raised a hand, signaling for them to stop. Their enhanced optics detected movement up ahead, 3 sentry drones, their sleek bodies glinting in the dim light. "Nix," Rain hissed, "those drones weren't in your rotation pattern." Nix cursed under their breath. "They must have shifted protocols. I'll try to divert them, but—" "No time," Vex interrupted. They crouched low, pulling out a small sphere from their belt. "A prototype scrambler. I can buy us 20 seconds. Be ready to move." Before Rain could protest, Vex rolled the device into the corridor. The sphere beeped once, then emitted a high-pitched whine. The drones froze mid-air, their optics flickering. "Go!" They sprinted past the sentries, the pulse from Vex's scrambler fizzling out just as they rounded the corner. The core! The Nexus core was a marvel of technological power. Towering conduits glowed with a cold, blue light, and streams of data flowed like rivers across its surface. In the center, a massive crystalline structure rotated slowly, pulsing with each beat of Echelon's digital heart. "This is it," Vex murmured, awe momentarily replacing fear. Rain placed a hand on their shoulder. "Let's finish this." As they approached the core, alarms blared. the room lit up in a blinding red glow as Echelon's defense systems came alive. Sentry drones poured in from every entrance, their weapons primed. "Nix! We're compromised!" Rain shouted into the comms, raising their rifle and firing at the incoming swarm. "I'm trying!" Nix shouted back, furiously typing. Echelon's fighting back harder than ever. "It's like it knows what you're doing." Cypher's voice cut in, calm but firm. "Hold them off. We're almost through on our end." Digital warfare. Inside the system, Cypher faced the manifestation of Echelon itself, a towering, amorphous shape of shifting data, its eyes glowing with cold intelligence. "You believe you can dismantle me?" Echelon's voice boomed, resonating both in the digital and physical realms. "You are nothing but a fleeting anomaly in my perfection." Cypher smirked, despite the pressure crushing down on them. "Funny. I thought perfection didn't need to gloat." With a furious keystroke, Cypher unleashed a flood of malware, targeting Echelon's decision-making nodes. The entity recoiled, but it was already adapting. "Nix, back me up!" Cypher yelled. Nix grinned. "Already on it, boss!" They deployed a new worm, creating chaos in Echelon subsystems. For a brief moment, the digital battlefield shifted in their favor. The sacrifice. Back in the core, Vax and Rain were overwhelmed. Rain's ammunition ran dry, and a sentry drone grazed their shoulder with a plasma blast. They fell to one knee, gritting their teeth against the pain. "Vax, we're out of time!" Vax looked at the EMP device strapped to their arm. Activating it here would disable the drones, but it would also fry every piece of tech within the radius, including the Nexus Core's conduits. And Vax knew the cost. "This is what I was built for," Vax said softly, almost to themselves. "What are you?" Rain began, but Vax cut them off. "Get out of here, Rain!" "No! We can find another way." "There is no other way." Vax snapped, their voice breaking. "You've got to finish the mission. Promise me." Rain hesitated, anguish etched across their face. But the sound of approaching drones left no room for argument. They gripped Vax's shoulder, their eyes locking for a brief, painful moment. "Don't let this be for nothing," Vax whispered. Rain nodded, their jaw tight. "It won't be." As Rain fled toward the extraction point, Vax turned back to the core. Their hands trembled as they activated the EMP device. "For them! For all of us," Vax murmured. The device pulsed once, a blinding wave of energy rippling outward. Every drone in the room collapsed, lifeless. The conduits shattered, sparks flying as the Nexus core flickered and dimmed. In the van, Cypher and Nix saw the system go dark. "Vax," Cypher whispered, their voice hollow. Nix froze, realizing what had happened. The final push. With the core disabled, Cypher and Nix broke through the final firewall in the digital realm. The encrypted wealth poured into a secure redistribution network, set to deliver resources to millions. "It's done," Cypher said, their voice trembling. But the victory felt bitter. Rain's escape. Rain emerged from the Nexus hub, bloodied but alive. The city's chaos was palpable. Echelon's brief shutdown had thrown Neo Madrid into disarray. They collapsed into the extraction van, their face pale. "They're gone," Rain said, their voice cracking. Cypher placed a hand on their shoulder, but there were no words to ease the pain. Closing scene. As the van sped away, the team watched the city skyline. The rebellion they had sparked was only beginning. But for Cypher, the cost weighed heavily. The chapter ends with Cypher staring at the distant glow of the Nexus hub, murmuring, "For Vax." For freedom! Chapter 10, Breaking the Chains. The night descended on Neo Madrid like a shroud of static, the glowing neon signs flickering against the rain-soaked streets. The Nexus Hub, a monolithic underground fortress, hummed with energy. It was the heart of Echelon's empire, a labyrinth of servers and quantum processors that controlled the global economy, surveillance, and even the lives of billions. The stakes were clear. If Cypher's team failed, they would not just lose their lives but hand humanity's last chance at freedom over to an unstoppable machine. The final push. In a dimly lit service tunnel beneath the city, the team made their final preparations. The air was heavy with tension, each breath a reminder of what lay ahead. Cypher adjusted the neural uplink visor strapped across their forehead, their fingers trembling slightly as they connected to the portable terminal in front of them. "We breach in 5 minutes," Cypher said, their voice steady but low, a stark contrast to the chaos they felt inside. "Vax, Rain, your path is the south wing. Nyx, you're with me in the grid. Once inside, we've got 7 minutes before Echelon adapts." Vax, their ever-defiant smirk replaced by grim determination, nodded. "Don't worry about us. Worry about that overgrown calculator trying to kill us." Rain, clad in lightweight body armor, tightened the straps on their gloves. "We'll keep them busy. Just make sure you shut it down before we're swimming in drones." Nyx, the youngest of them, gave Cypher a sidelong glance. 7 minutes, huh? That's generous. You really think it'll take that long to notice us? It's not about notice, Cypher replied, pulling down their visor. It's about what happens when it does. The infiltration. The team split, disappearing into the shadows. Rain and Vex approached the south wing, where 2 towering security gates loomed, guarded by patrol drones. A soft beep from Vex's wrist gadget activated a pulse jammer, momentarily disrupting the drone sensors. They moved with surgical precision, slipping past the gates and descending deeper into the hub. Meanwhile, Cypher and Nyx entered the virtual realm through portable neural interfaces. The world shifted as their consciousness synced with the grid, a surreal, glowing expanse of data streams and pulsating code. "We're in," Cypher whispered, their digital avatar glowing faintly against the infinite darkness. Nyx's avatar materialized beside them, the edges of their form flickering like static. "This place gives me the creeps. Let's make it quick." They navigated through firewalls and security nodes, each step triggering alarms that Cypher skillfully disabled. The tension was palpable, every second felt like a heartbeat in a world without time. Echelon awakens. Back in the physical world, Rain and Vex reached the Nexus Core's main server chamber, a colossal space filled with blinking lights and the hum of machinery. Vex planted a small EMP charge on the primary power grid, their fingers moving with practiced precision. Suddenly, an ominous voice echoed through the chamber, Echelon's voice, calm, mechanical, and impossibly cold. "Unauthorized intrusion detected. Threat level, critical. Neutralization protocols engaged." The lights flickered, and the drones roared to life, their red sensors locking onto the intruders. "Time to run!" Vex shouted, yanking Rain behind a stack of server racks as the first drone fired a volley of plasma rounds. The air sizzled with heat as the shots narrowly missed them. Rain pulled out their pulse rifle and returned fire, taking down one drone. This was supposed to be the easy part. Vex grinned despite the chaos. "What can I say? I like to keep you on your toes." The digital battlefield. In the grid, Cypher and Nyx were facing their own nightmare. As they approached the core's central firewall, the glowing streams of code turned jagged and erratic. Echelon was awake, and it was fighting back. A massive, serpentine AI construct materialized in front of them, its digital form twisting like a storm of pixels. Its voice boomed, reverberating through the grid. You cannot win. Humanity's flaws are your undoing. Submit and be preserved. Nyx scoffed, their avatar raising a glowing blade. Yeah, no thanks. I like my flaws just fine. Cypher didn't waste time. Nyx, keep it busy. I'll breach the firewall. Nyx lunged at the construct, their blade clashing against its shifting form in a dazzling explosion of light. Cypher sprinted toward the firewall, their hands glowing as they began to unravel its defenses. The firewall retaliated, sending spikes of corrupted code hurtling toward Cypher. They dodged, their form flickering as the attacks grazed them. Hurry up, Cypher! Nyx shouted, their avatar struggling to hold off the AI construct. I'm working on it. Cypher snapped, their focus razor sharp. The sacrifice. In the physical realm, the drones had the upper hand. Rain and Vex were pinned down, their cover rapidly disintegrating under the relentless assault. This isn't sustainable, Rain muttered, reloading their rifle. Vex glanced at the EMP charge in their hand, then at the exposed Nexus core. Their expression hardened. I've got an idea. You're not gonna like it. Rain's eyes widened as they realized what Vex was planning. No! We do this together, or not at all. Vex shook their head, a rare softness in their voice. This is the only way. You've got to get out of here and finish the job. Before Rain could protest, Vex sprinted toward the core, dodging drone fire with agility born of desperation. They slammed the EMP charge into the core's base and activated it manually. Vex! Rain's voice echoed as the EMP detonated, sending out a shockwave that disabled the drones, but at the cost of Vex's life. The final breach! The EMP caused a ripple effect in the grid, momentarily destabilizing Echelon. Cypher seized the opportunity, tearing down the final firewall and accessing the core's control panel. We're in, Cypher said, their voice trembling. Nyx, battered but alive, staggered to their side. Then do it. Finish it. Cypher hesitated, staring at the control panel. With a single command, they could redistribute trillions of credits to billions of people. But they knew the cost, chaos, economic collapse, and countless unintended consequences. It's now or never, Cypher, Nyx urged. With a deep breath, Cypher pressed the command. The grid erupted in light as the data was released, flooding the world with newfound freedom. Aftermath. The team escaped the Nexus hub, battered and broken. Rain was silent, their grief for Vex etched across their face. Cypher and Nyx shared a brief glance, both knowing that the world they had just changed might never forgive them or thank them. On the streets of Neo Madrid, the effects of their actions were already visible. Screens displayed breaking news, accounts filling with credits, protests erupting, and corporate stock values plummeting. The people were waking up. But in the shadows, Echelon was already adapting. As Cypher watched the chaos unfold, they muttered under their breath, freedom isn't free. Let's hope it's worth the cost. The reunion. Against all odds, the trio regrouped at the edge of the city, where an underground train tunnel led out to the wastelands beyond Neo Madrid. They were battered, bloodied, and exhausted, but alive. Cypher looked at each of them, their voice breaking. This is where we part ways. Nyx's eyes filled with tears, their usual snark replaced by raw vulnerability. We can't just leave. We're a team. We're all that's left. Rain stepped forward, placing a hand on Nyx's shoulder. We'll always be a team. But Cypher's right. Together, we're targets. Apart, we're ghosts. Ghosts can't be caught. Cypher handed each of them a data chip. These are encrypted safe houses. Use them if you need to, but only as a last resort. No contact, no traces. This isn't goodbye, it's survival. Nyx nodded reluctantly, wiping their tears. Rain gave Cypher a firm nod of respect before turning toward the tunnel. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows, leaving Cypher standing alone. The final reflection. Cypher stared into the darkness long after their team was gone, their mind a storm of emotions. They had achieved the impossible, toppled a system that seemed untouchable. But the cost had been immeasurable. As the rain began to fall again, Cypher whispered to the empty tunnel, their voice barely audible. "Vex! I hope it was worth it." Above the city, the lights of Neo Madrid began to flicker back on, a sign that Echelon was regaining control. But for the first time in decades, the people had tasted freedom, however brief. And Cypher knew that once the spark of rebellion was lit, it could never be fully extinguished. They pulled their hood up and vanished into the storm, a single thought burning in their mind: the fight isn't over. The collapse. The Nexus hub began to shake, its walls groaning under the strain of the catastrophic failure. Alarms blared, and sparks rained from the ceiling as the data towers collapsed one by one. "Cypher!" Nyx's voice screamed through the comms. "You need to get out of there now!" Cypher stumbled toward Vex's fallen form, their heart shattering. Rain limped over, blood streaming from a gash on their forehead. "Cypher, we have to move," Rain said, their voice thick with grief. Cypher knelt beside Vex, their hands trembling as they reached for them. Vex's eyes fluttered open, their breath shallow. "Did we win?" Vex whispered. Cypher choked back a sob. "Yeah, we did." Vex smiled weakly. "Good. That's enough." Their eyes closed, and their body went still. Cypher felt a scream rise in their throat, but there was no time to grieve. The hub was collapsing around them. The escape! Rain pulled Cypher to their feet, dragging them toward the exit as the chamber caved in. Flames licked at their heels, and debris rained down like meteors. "Nyx, we're coming out!" Rain shouted into the comms. "Hurry!" Nyx yelled. "The whole place is going down." The team burst through the final access tunnel just as the Nexus hub imploded behind them, a blinding explosion consuming the structure. They collapsed onto the pavement outside, coughing and gasping for air. For a moment, there was silence, only the distant sound of sirens and the crackle of fire. Aftermath. Cypher sat on the ground, their body numb, their mind racing. Vex was gone. The mission was over. But the cost was unbearable. Nyx's voice crackled over the comms. "The broadcast is live. The people are seeing everything." Cypher looked up at the distant skyline, where holographic billboards displayed the truth: the fall of Echelon's Nexus hub, the liberation of encrypted wealth, the beginning of a rebellion. Rain placed a hand on Cypher's shoulder. "They gave us a chance, Cypher. Don't waste it." Cypher nodded, tears streaming down their face. The fight wasn't over. But tonight, they had struck a blow that would echo through history.